Hey guys, how's it going? This should be a nice, quick, and easy one today. Although normally when I say that, it turns into something longer than I expect it to be. Really quick, right off the bat, I just want to talk about two things today. Those are opposites and absolute value. Now, before we get into this, I want to have my bitter old man statement of the day. Is that when I was growing up, we never called them opposites. We called them the additive inverse. Okay, so we're going to start with opposites. It's very straightforward. The opposite of 4 is -4. The opposite of -3 is +3, okay? So really all you want to do here is flip the sign, okay? So for an opposite, all we really want to say is, hey, what's the opposite of 8? -8 is +8. The opposite of +8 is -8. What's the opposite of 1? -1. What's the opposite of 1,000,000? -1,000,000. Okay. You could do it for fractions. If I said, hey, what's the opposite of 5.5? -5.5 and +5.5. Okay, these are your opposites. Okay, so they work in pairs. 0 has no opposite. Okay, and so here's the thing. This is why it's important for us is that these numbers all have the same distance from 0. Now, distance is something that we measure always in positive numbers. So while we know positive and negative integers exist, when we measure distance, we always measure in positive units, right? So if you think about this, if these were feet, right? If I went from 0 to 10, I'd be going 10 feet. If I went 0 to -10, I'd also be going 10 feet. I wouldn't say, oh, I went -10 feet. I would say I went 10 feet to the left, right? Or I went 10 feet to the right. So when we think about distance, like feet, inches, miles, and things like that, we always measure in positive units. Never once have you pulled out a measuring tape and measured -5 feet, right? You just measured 5 feet in an opposite direction, okay? So again, that's all opposites are. They're just the same distance from 0, just in 2 different directions, okay? And yes, eventually this will be on a XY coordinate plane. Okay, so let's go to my bitter statement of the day. Okay, so absolute value. Okay, absolute value is what we got to talk about now. So I'm actually let's go ahead and let's get rid of this and just say absolute value. Okay, so absolute value. Absolute value is a way of expressing that distance from 0. Okay, so absolute value. If I said, hey, what's the absolute value of 5? In other words, how many spots did I go from 0 to 5? Well, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pretty self-explanatory. If I went to 8, what's the absolute value of 8? Well, I went 8 units from 0. I said, hey, what's the absolute value of -4? Well, again, I went 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to get there, right? Even though it's a negative number, I went 4 spots to get there. If I said, hey, what's the absolute value of -8? I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots to get there, and I ended up there, okay? So what's the absolute value of -8? +8. So the symbol for absolute value are just 2 vertical lines that look like that. So if I said, hey, what's the absolute value of 4? It's 4. If I said, what's the absolute value of -4? It's 4, okay? Long story short, anything that's inside these brackets comes out positive, okay? Again, I said brackets, these vertical lines, right? These are a special form of parentheses, by the way. So in your order of operations, anything that you do inside these has to be done first. And we cannot use the distributive property, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So let's take a look at a couple examples really quick. If I said, hey, what's the absolute value of 175? The absolute value of 175 is 175. If I said, hey, what's the absolute value of -3? It's +3. What's the absolute value of 5? 5. What's the absolute value of -76? +76. What's the absolute value of 0? 0. Okay? So long story short, except for 0, anything that's inside absolute value, it just comes out positive, okay? I wasn't really expecting to have to talk about this, but a lot of the problems on IXL for the things we're doing with functions throw in absolute value functions. And I realized it's something we haven't gone over. It's something you should have learned a couple years ago, but if you didn't, that's okay. Just that's all you need to know, okay? So long story short, if it's an opposite, flip the sign. Okay, if it's negative, it becomes positive. If it's positive, it becomes negative. If it's absolute value, just make it positive.